Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend Brad. What's going on this morning?
Not much, man. Life is good. It's been really hot over here in Utah. We've had, in the middle of July where it's 95 every day. But yeah, things are good. Went camping with family this week.
Nice.
Yeah, things are good. What about you?
Things are pretty good here. We're getting some pretty hot weather here as well, but it's been, we've actually got some rain yesterday, which was very much needed. So the old mountain biking trails shouldn't be as dusty, which would be nice.
Nice.
Yeah. So overall, things are good, though. Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that you and I have battered around over the years, and it's actually something that helped define the culture in our first battle team together when we were in the IC together. And that is the famous Rudyard Kipling, I can never say his name right, quote, and I'm going to read it to you. "Now this is the law of the jungle, as old and as true as the sky. And the wolf that shall keep it may prosper, but the wolf that shall break it must die. As the creeper that girdles the tree trunk, the law runneth forward and back. For the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack." So, what's that mean to you?
Man, there's a lot to unpack there. That quote from Rudyard Kipling came from The Jungle Book. And for those of you who know The Jungle Book, Mowgli was a boy raised by wolves. Obviously, these wolves, one of the big things in that story is the tribalism, the brotherhood, the camaraderie of wolves. And when you think about that quote, and what it brings to me is the fact that we as men, while we feel that we are strong, that we are capable, the fact of the matter is we can't do things alone. We need other men. We need a tribe. We need a pack. We need others who are going to buoy us up, because individually we may be strong, but as a group, we are unbreakable. We are unflinchingly powerful. And every man needs that. Every man craves it. Every man desires it. But the question becomes, how many men truly have that?
Yeah, we talk a lot about, you can't be the lone wolf. The lone wolf doesn't prosper as much as the guy who has a pack. And this quote immediately addresses that. Now, just because Rudyard Kipling said it doesn't mean it's necessarily dead on. But there are countless examples of situations where it's very, very true. In doing a little background for this particular episode, I think I shared this website with you, but there's a website that talks about how both John Wooden and Phil Jackson both use this independently in different writings that they did to their respective teams who were champions. For those of you who don't know, John Wooden won the NCAA basketball championship 10 times, and Phil Jackson was the coach of the Chicago Bulls during their big run. And they both had big studs, namely Wooden had Bill Walton and Phil Jackson had Michael Jordan. So there's the wolf. But the strength of those wolves, and both of them have said that independently, was the pack of players that they put around them.
Yeah.
So the success there, it's just one little example of how an individual is allowed to succeed based on the cast of characters that's built around him. You think about any other kind of situation in the world where individuals prosper, they're gonna have people around them. You think about an army unit, right, or a special operations unit that goes in. It's not the individual that gets the job done; it's the team, and the team empowers the individual. On a much smaller scale, you think about a group at work. The mechanical engineer can't do the project alone. He's requiring help from the electrical engineer, from the PCB board designer, the technician. All of those individuals thrive off each other, and the strength of the individual is provided by the group that is around them. And likewise, the strength of the group is provided by the strengths of the unique individuals.
This is an easy one to digest when you think about sports. And, you shared that quote that Phil Jackson had around this. And kind of some insight into that is I'm a big Utah Jazz fan, being here. And everybody knows the last two championships that Michael Jordan won were against the Jazz. I was I was a kid. I'm still traumatized over the event. I really didn't handle any of that well. But in hindsight, you look back at how great Michael Jordan was, and you think of The Last Dance on Netflix about his last season, and everybody remembers his iconic shot where, yes, he pushed off, but it wasn't Michael Jordan doing it alone. What's so interesting about that is the 98 finals ended with Michael Jordan's iconic shot. But the year before, the way that the Bulls won was the Jazz were up in Game 6 by a point. Maybe the game was tied. I can't remember. But what did Michael Jordan do in the clutch? He passed to his teammate Steve Kerr, just a bit player, who's now obviously a legendary coach in his own right, but he made some 18-foot jumper to win the Bulls the title. He, as the greatest basketball player of all time, knew that he couldn't do it alone, and he trusted his teammate in that moment in the finals, in a game where they were either tied or down by one, I can't remember which, to execute in that moment. The greatest player ever said, I can't do it alone. I'm going to trust somebody else. I'm going to trust part of my pack, if you will, to execute, to hold up his end of the bargain, and he did. And that's what's so powerful about this concept is, yeah, sometimes we feel that we're incredibly capable. We feel that we are strong. We feel that we are able. But there are those around us, there are those within our circle that we not only want to trust, but that we implicitly trust to execute on our behalf for a common shared goal. And that's so applicable in the realm of manliness and in manhood. Right? Like we have teams at work. How much do we trust these individuals on our team? How much do we implicitly know that they're going to be able to execute for us? But more so, almost more importantly, is when we are, as we talked about in our last episode, sometimes we can be in a rut. Sometimes times can get hard. Things can be challenging. Who around us can we trust in those times to help buoy us up and support us? That's part of being in a pack is we know that we can't do these things alone, but we want to have people around us. We need to have people around us that we trust implicitly to help us toward that greater good, that ideal outcome.
You use the word trust there a lot. I want to dig into that a little bit because that's not a part of this that I thought about going into it. I was thinking about skill sets, capabilities, the idea that I'm really good at this, you're really good at that, but together we're really good at the whole picture. The concept of trust and the ability to, lean on guys in these situations is really a strong concept. Can you flesh that out a little bit more? Maybe give some examples of where you've seen that in life or used that?
Sure. Absolutely. The very concept of having a pack to me revolves around the idea of, we all have skills, we all have talents, we all have abilities, but in order for a team to be successful, you know that you have to be able to rely on somebody else. Right? Like in times of trouble, in times of adversity, times of stress, understanding that there are others involved in this team that are there, you have to be able to trust them. Like you think so often, it comes back to sports, right? Like you think of Tom Brady, who's won countless Super Bowls, right? How many of those Super Bowls did he win because his defense was able to make plays while he was not on the field? How many times was he able to hand the ball off to one of his running backs knowing that they were going to be able to take care of it, get the first down, break off a chunk play of 20 yards, right? Like there's a level of trust there in which I know his skills. I know what he's capable of. So therefore I know that he's going to be able to execute. So something I think about on a personal level, right, is we, as we've talked about, you and I have been in the Iron Council for a while, and we have battle teams. And I know that when I'm going through something difficult, when I'm going through a hard time, like I'm going to reach out to some of the brothers on my team, right? Like specifically, I've reached out to you at times because there's certain things that certain skills you have, certain talents you have, but at the same time, I trust you enough to be able to approach you with that conversation. Mm-hmm. It might be uncomfortable. Or, we look at some of our friends like Dan or Cam or whomever, the same thing. Yeah, they are skilled in fitness or in jiu-jitsu or whatever that looks like. So I can approach them with a question, but I also can approach them with that question because I trust them and I believe in them and I know that they have my back. So that, I guess, is a way of unpacking how I interpret that trust element. But does that make sense?
It makes sense. And what I'm trying to do is tie it back to Kipling's quote about how that that provides the strength of the wolf, right? That trust is providing you some strength to grow, to heal, to get what you need. I think I know where you're going to go, but how does that trust also build the strength of the pack?
I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you really think about it, that's building me. But at the same time, when I'm able to go to somebody else and confide in them and I can trust them, I build in a way that same relationship and rapport with them so that they know that I'm there for them as well. Right. Like going back to the Tom Brady example, his defense, they held a 3-and-out, but they know that when he's back on the field, they can trust him to make plays. They can trust him to convert a third down. They can trust him to move the sticks to get a touchdown, right? Like that trust is a mutual understanding, because when you trust in somebody else and do so implicitly, that builds a lot of confidence and strength in them. And they can look back at you with that same amount of trust and confidence. Mm-hmm. It's a mutual growth. It's the strength of the pack, as we talk about, is absolutely mutual.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. And not to harp on the Brady thing, but I mean, he relied on his kicker for, I think, 2 out of the first 3 Super Bowls that they won. So absolutely, he was relying on somebody else and trusting somebody else. Yeah. This concept of trust, this concept of having a pack, of having the men in your life providing you strength, and you in turn providing the group of men that's in your life strength, was really introduced to me when I first joined a battle team and became a member of the Iron Council. And again, this is, we're not going to be doing a promo here for it, but the concept of finding a group of men that you can not only rely on, but really, for lack of a better word, feel vulnerable with, or be vulnerable with, and extend that level to, is what builds that strength. I'm thinking of situations where we've had individuals come to us and they don't know what to do with their marriage. They don't know what to do with kids in a certain situation, career options. I've gone to the group with big career changes that scared the hell out of me. Different situations that, as men, maybe it's something that we, especially in like the lone wolf mentality, would look at it and be like, that's no one else's problem but mine. I can figure that out. I can rely on myself, my skills to get through it. And having that group of men to really bang those ideas off of and work through the process was so powerful, and is so powerful. I'm sure you've got examples, but I think of one where we had a really good friend, and he was having a lot of problems in his marriage and ended up going through a divorce and came out much stronger on the other side. But it was a hell of a journey for him. And I strongly believe that it was the strength of the group of men around him, buoying him up, checking in on him, keeping him sane and whole during that process, that brought him through to the other side. I don't know if you can give a few examples maybe of where you've seen this in life as well.
Well, I mean, going back, a lot of the examples I have are kind of shared experiences with you, right? But at the same time, I can think of so many times where I've had a friend, a colleague, go through something, choosing to go through something alone, and they fail. I mean, case in point, this actually comes back to the concept of a battle team, this band of brothers. There is an individual on my team currently who had a really bad week, really bad. Like, he was really stressed out at work. He was given a deadline that was almost impossible to hit. So his family was getting sick, and he decided that he was going to lone wolf it. He didn't reach out to anybody. He didn't try to confide in anybody. He just tried to white knuckle shotgun that thing. And he had a miserable, horrible week where he did not execute on anything. And he looked back in retrospect, he reached out to everybody and said, yeah, I had a bad week this week. All this stuff went on. I didn't do what I was supposed to. And my first question to him was, you obviously recognize that at several points along the way. Why didn't you reach out to any of us? Why didn't you talk to any of us? You had all these countless opportunities throughout the week to turn that thing around and rely on some other men and really confide in somebody, but you decided to go at it alone. and you had a brutal week. And it was very eye-opening to him. He's like, yeah, you're right. And that, along with any example of men who are in a tribe or in a brotherhood who are in this wolf pack, if you will, when they go at it alone, actually brings me back to a quote from Game of Thrones, of all things. And in Game of Thrones, Ned Stark tells his daughter, when the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. So you think about that. Snows fall, white winds blow, adversity, shit, hardship. If you go at it alone, the lone wolf's not going to survive. Right? The lone wolf is going to die. That's what's so fascinating about the whole concept of the lone wolf, if you think about it. This whole, I got this myself, I'm the lone wolf. Wolves specifically live in packs. The thing that people don't talk about is if a wolf gets separated from its pack, it dies. That's what happens. And that's what's so fascinating about this lone wolf mentality is if a wolf out in the wilderness, out in the open of Alaska or whatever, gets separated from its pack, it dies.
The metaphor is so like on the nose, right, to men. It's so blatantly obvious when you start to talk about it and think about it, where we require other men to survive. Yes, we are big, we are strong, we are capable, but it goes back to our conversation last week where I was kind of hammering on, we're human at the same time. We are pack animals. We are designed to be around other people. We are designed to help other people and rely on other people simultaneously. So we will thrive in those situations, and we will not thrive in the situations where we're alone. Will we survive? Possibly. There are guys who are capable of living in solo situations, but they're not going to thrive. They're not going to have their best life. They're not going to have a quality experience and live as well as they would surrounded by a strong group of capable men. And as you find those men and put them around you, you will become a better, more capable man. The key to that is also determining the men that you need in your pack and the men that you need to not have in your pack. I think we've both seen situations where, or experienced situations in life where we've let men into our pack who are probably great guys, but maybe they're partiers, they're drinkers, they're womanizers or whatever. They're the kind of men who are probably fun to be around, but they detract from the capability and the power of the pack that you're building. And that's, to me, that's something that's really been important for me over the last, I'll say 5 to 10 years to determine whether those men are important enough to some aspect of my life to keep in my pack or not. And I've had to make some tough decisions where I decide to just say, you know what, you're a great guy. It's just, it's not, we don't have enough in common or it's not heading in the direction that's working for me.
How do you determine that? I mean, it's really easy for men to want to hold on to their buddies.
Yeah.
But how do you make that distinction of I need to cut this person out of my life or this person isn't providing the value that I need?
For me, I'll give an example for me. So when we were younger, when my wife and I were younger, I'd say like right around the time we were getting married, we were running with a crew of couples that was probably about 6 or 7 couples. And part of that crew was my wife's best friend from college and her husband, who we are still incredibly close with, and then a bunch of other people who, a lot of whom she went to school with down here or were friends of people she went to school with down here. Being the transplant, I didn't have any friends locally, so I kind of relied on those people to kind of be my first group down here. And there are a couple guys in that group who were just brash, big drinkers, would go away for the weekend, and I don't know if they did or not, but there was talk of them stepping out. Gamblers, they had mouths on them that in public. Like, it's one thing if you're just hanging out with your buddies around a campfire or somewhere, and the language gets rough. That doesn't bother me. I mean, I grew up working in the trades with my dad. I kind of got used to that. But if I'm in somebody's backyard and the neighbors are over there with their little kids, I don't need to have somebody dropping F-bombs every 5 seconds, that kind of thing. And it just got to a point where the values that a couple of these guys had, they valued money, they valued power, they valued career growth, but they didn't value integrity, honesty to an extent, stuff like that. I had to kind of make the decision to just drift away from these guys. And the deciding point for me really was, how did I feel when I was around these guys, both in social settings and like one-on-one settings? If I didn't want to hang out with these guys one-on-one, that was a big red flag to me. If I didn't like the way the group was when they were in the group, that was also a red flag. And then the other thing was, as we all started to have kids, do I want this person influencing my kids? Especially if I had sons, but even, it sounds bad to say, but even with daughters, and actually more so with daughters now as they're older, do I want those men influencing my daughters? No, absolutely not. So it was a gradual thing. I don't think there was like a defining moment where it was like done, but it was a gradual growth of, okay, I'm attracted to this kind of mentality. I am not attracted to this kind of mentality. I grow over here. I degrade over here. So the guys that hang out over here where I degrade more, I'm going to stop hanging out with them as much. I think it got to a point where we're just like, okay, we haven't seen each other in 6 months, 8 months, whatever. We're just not friends anymore. That's fine. Life goes on. I don't think there's any harm or foul done there. And I've just gravitated towards the people who have, or guys specifically, who live more the values that I want to live. Now, there's fringe players in my life, of course, who are what I'll call in the gray area. They're good guys, but they have faults, which we all do. But their faults show up more in areas where I really don't want as part of my life. But they're not there enough where I have to completely remove them from my life. Those are the guys I keep kind of at an arm's length, right? So I've got my inner circle, guys like yourself, who are in the inner circle, and I can trust with anything. I value not only the man they are, but the man they're trying to be. And then I kind of have the guys on the fringe of that who are, for all intents and purposes, good men, but they have that, I can't describe it other than that gray area that when that comes out, I tend to move away from them. So I have to keep them at an arm's length just to make sure that I don't get sucked into that too much. Does that make sense to you?
No, that absolutely does. And the word that I really picked out from what you were saying there is shared value. Like, those shared values are important in a pack. Yeah, those guys who drink and party, maybe there's a guy who drinks and parties, but he has the same shared values as you do.
Yeah.
Those men didn't, right? They didn't want the same things from life that you want. And as a result, there's going to naturally be some resistance there. And I think too many men allow themselves to be surrounded by other men that don't have those same shared values because, they're fun at parties, or they have a good time, or whatever that looks like. Is there room in your life for somebody where you have a good time? Sure. Right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, it's very important that you surround yourself with people who complement you, who have skills that you aspire to want to have, who have the same shared values, who want the same thing. That is a pack. And I think that's what you outlined really, really well. In that example is, yeah, these guys, they served a purpose for a while, but as you started to realize, they're not after the same things I am. They don't want the same things I want. They don't even necessarily do the things that I want to do. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to find men who do. That is a pack. Yes, of course, there are those you want to keep at arm's length because there's something in them that is worthwhile. Like, for example, I have a guy I used to work with who he's a nice guy, right? Like, he sends a lot of funny memes to me. I'll talk to him sometimes, but he always wants to hang out with me, and I have very little desire to hang out with him because he loves going drinking on the weekend. And I don't drink. There's nothing wrong with somebody who wants to drink, but that's his life. Is I live for the weekend, to go to the club, to get hammered, to try to find chicks to hook up with. He does not take care of himself. Physical fitness is not a priority of his at all. He is okay being at a dead-end job that pays the bills without aspirations for improvement or growth. He pretty much has a almost dysfunctional relationship with his son in a way. Mm-hmm. So the things that matter to me and are important to me are clearly things that are not important to him. Yeah, he makes me laugh. Yeah, he's a funny guy. But the areas of my life that are important to me, taking care of myself physically, being present for my family, and being the best, working on being the best husband, father that I can be. Having ambition in my career and personally, those are things that matter to me. Those are key parts of my ethos. That guy doesn't have those. So if he texts me, I'll text him back. But is he somebody that I look to want to hang out with, to bring into my circle? No. And that's the key thing with a pack is you have to be willing to bring that person into your circle, but at the same time, they need to be willing to do the same with you. And that can be a tricky thing to understand at first. But as you get to know somebody, you actually have conversations with them, as you actually do things with them, you start to gain that mutual understanding, that mutual, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like a mutual likability, if you will, that allows you guys to form
like a respect or
there we go.
Yeah. I want to talk specifically to the younger guys too. And this may be relevant to some of the older guys, but I see a lot of younger guys fall into this trap. The guys who they're fresh out of college or young guys just starting their lives, the idea of going out and partying and having a good time. I am not going to down anybody for that because believe me, I did that. It was college. And then like the first few years outside of it were just, it was work for the weekend, make the beer money, get out, have a good time, go out to somebody's beach house or whatever and have a great time. And I don't want to also sound like I just sat on this high horse and was like, you're a good guy, you're a bad guy, you're kind of a gray guy. Let me figure this out. This was a long, multi-year, probably 5 to 10 year evolution for me in terms of just understanding what made me feel right and what made me feel wrong. So I don't want these young guys who are maybe listening to this, trying to figure out what they're doing in life, to think that if they don't have this, the word that's coming to my mind is moral compass, defined, that there's something wrong with them, because there's not. Believe me, I spent more than my fair share of Sunday mornings hungover as all hell trying to figure out what happened the night before I kind of realized that maybe doing that the night before just wasn't the end all be all. And still slip into that mode sometimes. I won't lie. It happens. But as you surround yourself with guys who are more of your mindset, so you surround guys who want to go on a backpacking trip over a weekend versus go to a beach house and just get hammered. Guys who want to, hey, let's go snowboarding for the weekend. Let's take a trip somewhere. Hey, we're going to go mountain biking at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. Okay, well, definitely can't get wrecked on Saturday night. I keep going back to this because that's the part of my life that was kind of the defining moment of veering left versus veering right. But what I'm getting at here is you don't all of a sudden have to flip the switch. It becomes a slow grade. And if you're younger guy, you're going to develop that moral compass by making good choices and by making bad choices. And you're going to make both, and you're going to learn from both. The important thing to remember is to kind of take a moment to think back on whatever happened, whatever the incident was. Think about who you were surrounded by. Think about what the decisions of the individuals were, and how the overall situation made you feel, and how each individual in that situation made you feel. That's going to help you accumulate the knowledge to decide the guys that you want in your inner circle and the guys that you might want to either keep at arm's length or disengage from. I can tell you for certainty that I've run into the guys who I've kind of disengaged from every once in a blue moon. Still nice guys. We're still able to, shake each other's hand and whatever. But I'm confident that I made the right decision removing them from my life, in the sense that I look at what they've gone through, whether it's the way that they handle their family, the way that they've handled their business, the way that they look personally in terms of their physical fitness, stuff like that. Things that I value. Your values may be different. I'm not here to talk to you about what your values are, at least not in this episode. But the way that I look at these guys over the years and how they've developed has helped me confirm that my moral compass kind of found its way. And again, I want to just make it clear that moral compass found its way after a lot of wrong decisions. A lot of good decisions too. But as you make decisions to the left and to the right, that compass kind of finds its way to the middle, and you figure out the path that you want to be on. And then that, as you're doing that, you're finding out that that compass is finding its path because you're refining the men that you have in your life. As that group improves, as that strength of that pack improves, that compass finds its direction, and you're able to move forward accordingly.
I agree with all of that. I also would add that even if you're a younger guy, don't put off working on this just thinking, I'm in my 20s, I'm just going to party, I'll figure that out later. We should always be aspirational. One of my greatest regrets, and the older we get, it seems like the more regrets we have when we look back on life, is I wish I were a lot more aspirational in my 20s. I wish I would have tried a lot harder to surround myself with men that are going to push me and challenge me when I was younger. Had I done that, obviously life could have been different, and that's okay. Like, there comes a point where you realize hindsight doesn't do you any good. The best you can do is where you are right now. But a lot of young guys have youth on their side, right? You've got time. If you get your life put together and figured out in your 20s, just imagine where you'll be when you're 50. It's unbelievable. So don't necessarily hesitate to start working on that. But to Dan's point, it starts with identifying those values, what they are, what you are about. Like, that's the thing that so many guys lose sight of, is what are you about? Like, there are guys out there who don't have that defined. If you don't have that defined, what can you do to get that defined? Who are you? When you realize who you are, what matters to you, start to seek out guys who have those same values. And then that does come to the question of how, right? Like, how do you find those men? And that oftentimes can be harder said than done, right?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, you have to start by understanding your values, your ethos, your code, right? Like Jocko talks about his code. Like, that's who you are, what you're about. It's really important to understand that. Understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. And as you start to identify those things and lay those things out, you know what you're about. Unflinchingly, unshakingly, you know who you are. When people peel those curtains away, peel those layers away, that's who you are. Right? Start there. That's when you can start to foster, to build, to seek out men who are going to help you be that best version of yourself. And in turn, you can help them be the best version of themselves.
So the concept of seeking out those men is an important one, and it's something we should touch on a little bit here. That is the hardest part of this process, especially if your current pack is all people who you have identified as people that you don't necessarily want or don't espouse your values and shouldn't be in your pack. Like I said before, I ran with this group of, I don't know, 6-ish couples. I think we're friends with 2 now, and some drifted because they moved away, but a lot drifted because they didn't espouse values. And I said you're going to find that as individuals, you have a value system, and as a couple, once you settle down, you also have a value system. What's interesting to me is the guys that I do not have a situation where, as a couple, we've kind of ostracized another couple, but the guy I was like, oh, he's a good guy, I want to hang on to him. Like, they kind of linked up and they kind of moved together. But we'll stick to just men here. It's going to happen over time. It's going to happen through a long selection period. But getting back to growing that group, don't be afraid to reach out into areas where you have interests, because you will find men there who fall into both camps, but it opens a new world for you. So I'm involved in mountain biking, right? I like mountain biking. There are groups here on Long Island that do group rides, that kind of stuff. I've actually put myself into a couple of these situations just to go meet guys. Now, there's a lot of guys there who will do the ride and then, let's go to the brewery afterwards. Okay, I'm not opposed to that, but I kind of keep an eye on it. Okay, the guys who have like a beer, 2 beers, no problem. The guys who go for a ride and then put down like 6 or 8 beers at the brewery and then drive home. Okay, those are probably not the guys I want to hang out with. But you also get to learn and know the guys and understand who they are and figure out what they're about. And it's a good putting yourself into those situations where you have a common interest, but you may be meeting people who you don't know, is a great way to kind of break the ice, get to know people, and expand your circle a little bit. Now, you're not going to become best friends with the guy at the mountain bike, meetup tomorrow, But over time, you may get to know him and get to really bring him into that inner circle of yours. And likewise, he would do that for you. I can say with complete honesty that I met one of my best friends here on Long Island through mountain biking. It was a combination of mountain biking and the fact that he has a daughter my daughter's age, so we were able to be in situations a lot together, and we just ended up clicking and making that work. And he is one of those guys who shares a lot of the same values as me, pulls me up, I pull him up, and it's just this symbiotic relationship that really strengthens us. We've met other guys who kind of come into that fold, and other guys who are in that, let's say, that mountain biking community. Great guys, but we kind of like, all right, we're gonna hang out with him, but we're gonna have an exit strategy for when things get a little squirrely. And don't be afraid also to reach up and reach down in age groups. I think there's a lot of value in older men, and I'm pointing at myself now, all of a sudden, mentoring younger guys, and younger guys reaching up and maybe asking for that kind of relationship. So that I'm 43 years old right now, right? There's a lot of value that I can bring to a 25-year-old's life in terms of guidance, in terms of mentoring, in terms of just, hey, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, you don't want it kind of knowledge that staying within your age group can't provide. And likewise, us older guys reach down to those younger guys, because there's a lot of value that they can provide to us in terms of pushing you to get out of your comfort zone. Listen, you'll agree, you're getting up there in age. You're not quite as old as me, but it's as you get older, there's a certain laziness that comes in with the wife and the kids and the job and this. I don't have time to whatever. The younger guys, they'll push you to get out of that shell and be like, hey, let's go do this. Let's go do that. Let's explore this. Let's have some more fun. They'll bring a little bit more excitement into your life. I think it's good to have an age range in your group as well as kind of a breadth of knowledge.
Yeah. No, I think that's huge, right? It's being able to identify those people. But you said something really, really that sticks out to me as a great way to get started. That's shared interests, right? Like shared hobbies, shared passions, shared interests. That's a way that, we as humans meet other people. Like you meet them through mountain biking. You can meet them through meeting a bunch of guys in jiu-jitsu currently. Mm-hmm. Now you meet guys at the gym. You meet guys who enjoy reading or chess or cooking or whatever. Through those shared interests, you start to get to know a bunch of people. You're going to realize that when you start to get to know some of these people, you're going to gravitate towards some people. And as you start to gravitate toward them, those are people that you can look at as potential additions to the pack, if you will. But that's a great way to get started. Like I think of, when I go to jiu-jitsu, there's this group that we go in the mornings. They're just a great group of guys. And the more I get to know them, I'm like, there's some really good guys in here that I feel like I have a lot of shared values with. And there's some other guys that don't, and that's okay. It's identifying in that group through those shared interests. Who am I gravitating to? Who seems to have some of these shared values? And that's how friendships can start to get forged. And ultimately, that's how you can add somebody to a pack.
Yeah.
And interestingly, something else that can happen is don't be dismissive of organic stuff, like friends that you meet through work, or people you meet at church or at a party or wherever. We all are presented with organic opportunities all the time. We find ourselves having good conversations with guys, and be okay pursuing that a little bit. I look at my pack, and two of my brothers, if you will, best friends, just really good guys, I organically just met because I moved into an apartment when I was in college, and they lived in, one of them lived in the apartment across from me, and one of them lived in the apartment below me. And just hanging out and getting together, I was like, I really like these guys. They're really cool. And we just randomly ended up next to each other in this apartment complex, and we're great friends, brothers to this day. They're part of my tribe. So it's really easy for us to dismiss these organic things. We think that yes, there are times where we have to go out and intentionally seek guys to add to our tribes and to find. That is part of it. Absolutely. But sometimes we are so dismissive of organic situations or shared interests or people that just come into our lives just by us living our lives that we have to be aware of.
Another area and I think your kids are probably a touch too young for this to happen to you just yet, but another area where that's going to happen a lot organically is through school. If your
Oh yeah.
kids go to public school and are involved in sports programs or after school activities of any kind, you're going to get sucked into that in some sense. School assemblies, sporting events, daisy parades, whatever it is. And there's going to be a lot of families that show up, and you're going to see the same guys over and over again. Those are guys in your community. Those are guys who you immediately have a connection with because they have kids the same age who are doing the same activities. Do not be dismissive of that. I would say that some of the best guys I've met on Long Island, I've met through that, just through happenstance of going to my kids' activities and meeting these people. It gets a little tricky if your kids become enemies, but which has happened. But
Oh man.
it's in general, it's a great way to kind of bridge the gap and just have that common. There's a common interest there, right? It goes back to similar interests. Okay, interest is our kids and what they're doing. Coach your kids' sports teams. Get involved in their activities, whatever there is, scouts, whatever they're doing. It's a great way to meet guys who probably have the same moral compass as you, or a very similar moral compass, and that will grow your pack.
And make absolutely sure, right, like 100% sure that these men that you're adding to your pack provide value.
Yeah.
Provide tremendous value.
Yeah.
Like I've noticed the more put together have become, the easier it is for me to identify good men who have talents, who have strengths, who have skills that I aspire to have. And so when I identify those guys, I want to make sure that I can provide value to them as well. But identifying men that are going to make you better is what it's all about.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You talked about identifying values and identifying men of high value. As you become better at that, do you find yourself becoming a little more judgmental when you see the flaws in men and keeping those guys immediately at an arm's length?
Yeah, that's something that I might have talked to you about this at some point. There are men that I see that struggle with the things that I used to struggle with, right? Like being out of shape, struggle with certain elements of their marriage or how they are as dads. And sometimes I'm unfairly critical of these guys. I look at them and I'm like, I used to be that. I fixed that. Why the hell can't you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably not fair to them. But conversely, on the other hand, when you strive and when you're putting forth effort to be better, yeah, we're not perfect. And I'm the first to admit I'm far from perfect. There's a long way for me to go in so many ways. But I'm on an upward trajectory. When you are on an upward trajectory and you're putting forth the work, it almost becomes easy to identify men who either are or aren't doing the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can talk to a guy and you can pick up pretty quickly on how put together he is. And that's where some of that judgment comes in. If I can talk to a man and I can tell right off the bat that he doesn't care about improving himself, being a better father, being a better husband, being a better man, I don't want anything to do with them. Yeah, they might be somebody at work that I need to interact with, but that's not somebody I'm going to want to pursue some sort of friendship or brotherhood with. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but to me, I can pick up within a matter of minutes at this point, I feel, what a guy's trajectory looks like.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you went there, because that's where I was kind of going with the question. Was for a long time, once I kind of figured out that I had this, I'm going to keep going back to the term moral compass, but I kind of had this path and this criteria. Anyone outside of that criteria, I was kind of not bringing in. But recently, I'd say within the last 6 months or so, I've been making a conscious effort to really determine whether those guys are just that way because that's the way they want to be, or that's the way they are, but they're working to change it. If it's the latter, I'm making a conscious effort to try and bring them in to my pack, because it's very important to me that we not only take, but we give in these relationships. And if we're just taking and surrounding ourselves with guys who already meet all of the criteria that we've kind of defined as the strength of our pack, then we're not providing value to other men. And we're not giving a hand up to the guys who are on that same journey that we're on, but are just a little further towards the start of, towards the trailhead than we are. It is important as men that as we grow, we help other men grow. And you have to do that by determining the quality of man, not necessarily the level that he's at, if that makes sense. In terms of, okay, this guy has these deficiencies, but he is working towards being better at them. Let me be one of the guys who helps him get there. Let me introduce him to men who have conquered those demons, who have changed those parts of their lives, including myself potentially, and let me help him along in his journey. It's not a charity case. It's not anything like that. It's us doing to other men what other men have presumably done for us in terms of giving us a hand up, giving us some guidance, giving us the strength of the pack so that we may grow.
To that point, Ryan Mickler, who runs the Iron Council, talked about this, is a lot of times when you surround yourself with men, you want to surround yourself with 10s, if you will, like 10s out of 10 who have life figured out, who are awesome, who are rock stars, who are just general badasses in every element of life. But you have to make room for 5s or 6s out of 10 who have the potential to one day become 10s. When you surround yourself with those men who might not be as far along the journey, but have that same desire to get there, it can actually be incredibly uplifting and help kind of keep you going. We can, like, if we surround ourselves with guys who are all high achievers all the time, who have everything figured out, sometimes we're not, like, there can come some stagnation there almost, right? But if you're seeing somebody who's doing the work, who's putting forth that effort, who's like, man, today, for the first time I got on a scale, I weighed 300 pounds yesterday. Today I weigh 297 and I'm pumped about it. How awesome is that? How much does that inspire you? And that's so much of who we need to surround ourselves with. Is they don't necessarily need to have it all figured out right now, but they want to get there. And your ability to help them on the journey is going to do so much for you as well.
And again, it goes back to Kipling's quote, right? That the strength of the wolf is the pack. For that man, the strength of his strength is given by you, who is part of his pack. And in turn, whether you're going to realize it or not, he's giving strength back to the pack by continuing on that journey and becoming that stronger man. And by seeing that, by you modeling that activity, he's going to do that to somebody else down the line as well. Once he gets further along in his journey, he's going to give that hand up. That's how we fix things. That's how we make men in general stronger. All right, man. So we've been at this for almost an hour here. So I love this topic. I don't know about you. I could go on here. It's great. I think that the power of men helping men and growing a pack to be stronger is just an incredible concept that we can really dig into more. What I want the guys to jump on social media and really let us know how this has affected their lives. How are they building their packs? How are they helping other men in their lives? And how are they determining the guys who are beneficial to them and the guys who aren't? So by all means, reach out to us. You can find all of our social media on untamingmasculinity.com, as well as show notes for this and all of the other podcasts that we've made. The website is definitely the place to go. The other thing that we ask is that you jump on your podcast player of choice, give us a 5-star rating and review. You have no idea how much those help us get this word in front of other men and help them grow their packs, help them become stronger wolves within their packs. Brad, as always, man, I appreciate you. I thank you. We thank the men who have listened. Make sure you come back next week. And until then, we'll leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?